Okay, so hi again. I told myself this morning that it's okay to be nervous because otherwise you're kind of not on top of your game and ready for new challenges. So I'm doing a new challenge of standing up here this morning in this heat. I'm just plain glad to have you here. I'm glad to be standing. It was so hot earlier this week, I didn't think we'd have anybody here. As Bob said, I grew up in Bettendorf, Iowa, in the Quad Cities. One of my drawings back over here is the bridge over from Iowa to Illinois on 74. That bridge took out my playground park when I was a kid. And that bridge was my salvation in my growing up days of whenever there was arguing and fighting at home or something, I got on my bike and went down underneath that bridge and screamed a lot. So I have not drawn the new bridge. I haven't even been on it yet, but I'm excited to do that. Those are some of the new challenges that you get after being around all this time. They change, and it's okay. This one is actually a drawing up in the corner there, in the right-hand corner, is a drawing of the outside of this house. It's a Cape Cod place in Rhode Island. Greg and Betsy's house. It was in, yeah, whichever one it is. Anyway, since my kids were really tiny and I was bored while they napped, and my husband was traveling all the time, I started drawing. A realtor friend asked me to draw a house that he was doing, that he had sold, and as his career kept getting bigger and he was selling huge, beautiful houses, he still wanted to pay me $20 for doing that. And I said, I think I'm grown beyond it now. And I kind of just started getting involved in the arts community in Des Moines. And people were asking me, would you draw my home? And I was charging more for it. And being able to do it and not on typing paper, but learning a lot more about it. I took some classes. I found a market for my art, and that's what kept it going all the years. It was enjoyable and truly wonderful as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, when I was at school at the University of Iowa, the times were the 70s, and everything was wild and colorful and bright and bold and beautiful. And the art teacher said, go away. You're just too detailed. Nothing is coming out right. I said, okay. So I went into a whole another career line for schooling, and but still started doing some more artwork. And pointing to that little pin there, my mother and I designed the Hawks Are Clicking in 1976. And it was kind of fun because the whole stadium, especially the student section, was sitting there with these little clickers. And it was great fun. That was before we held up our cell phones. Yeah. So among those badges there, is there another one that somebody else did? Two of them there? We're among royalty here. I can't tell which ones they are, but they're there, aren't they? A couple years ago, a friend of mine who was involved in an organization that I was involved with, Up With People, he asked me if I would do some of a commemorative view, anyway, a drawing of the people who were involved in Up With People, and he wanted to raise some money with this. So we produced this tree. Around the corner over there, you'll see that tree as a print that is sold. And I was very pleased to do that tree. I loved the whole presentation of how it looked. And I took that idea to my church, and they loved the idea. Next to it over there is a drawing of There are 350 names buried in the tree. And those are the names of the people who contributed to make each of those organizations kind of show their longevity. And I was just terribly honored that that other piece was used. A friend of mine, this is his bathroom, their bathroom, I should say. Different artwork held up along the way. The one in the lower left corner is a, am I pronouncing it right? Plein air one. Yeah, we went out on a boat and I sat in an inner tube and drew. It was great fun. Some of the drawings have turned into t-shirts, and the t-shirts are not available at the time. I got to get some more orders if somebody does want those. And there's my Bettendorf Bridge. This is the tree that's back here. This is a image of the original. It was 30 by 40. It was bigger than, and it was on a board, not really paper. I've never spent that much on one piece of paper before. that was something. But it was bigger than the drawing board, so I couldn't get to the top of the tree. And I learned a long time ago, sometimes if you turn an image all the way upside down, you don't see, especially like the face, you're trying to do it, you can't get it right. Turning it upside down turns your brain a little bit, and you don't see a nose and an eye. You see a shadow and a curve and a bend. And so I was able to kind of finish that that way. I couldn't write names upside down very well. This is an image of what was First National Bank in Grinnell, Iowa, the Rose Window. A lot of architectural detail to that particular thing. It was really a challenge to do. If you've ever seen like a rose window or stained glass window, you've got all the colors. And I only work in pen and ink, so how do you do that? You kind of work and develop and build the depth with it, with that fine pen. And I'll show you some of that a little bit later. This one is, it's set up to, actually is a note card, and the print to it is over here. This was done for the AIDS Project of Central Iowa, where when someone from their organization would pass, they would send a single rose. And so they asked me to do something with just a single rose, and then we raised funds for it. So that was really, really special to do. That was an organization that I started getting involved with long ago. One of the interesting side parts about being an artist is that everybody thinks they can have it, and you will donate it to them. And so I learned, along with a lot of financial things about artwork, I learned that if I could choose an organization that I cared about, then when all these other organizations came along and said, oh, don't you care about us too? Well, my donations for the year or whatever went to those organizations, and I was able to designate and give to what I wanted to. Those prints are done on, those were all hand pulled on a huge old press. And then it's on a different kind of paper. It's on a more toothy paper than what I normally draw on. So you could add color to it and colored pencil. So somebody could have a different colored rose, whichever they wanted to have. This is a lovely drawing. Just, of kind of the back of our church. It was one of the things I've loved doing through the time is incorporating names, like I have done, or symbols or things about the drawing or the family that's asked me to do the drawing. Put their family names into it somewhere, or to be able to have it. This one, if you look on the, well, in the grass, if you know where to look for it, just opposite the tall tree. There's, in the ground, there's kind of the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist Society. This is Sandwich, Massachusetts. where Sandwich was named. It's the long walkway over there. This is in colored pencil. This is kind of one of the first ones I've showed you of colored pencil. Colored pencil is an interesting concept. It's not like the colored pencils that you get when you're in first and second grade. The pigment to the stuff they have nowadays to use professionally is so much finer quality than the grade school things, and you can really build and get some depth and different colors with that. A couple of bookmarks from one from a building and one from a tree. The one on the top here, I don't think you can see it too well. Maybe I've got it somewhere else in the rest of this, but I'll tell you about it. That was actually a bookmark that I did for Planned Parenthood of Greater Des Moines, which was another organization I gave frequently to and a lot of time and effort to it. Planned Parenthood has a huge book sale every year, and they wanted to thank the people that participated in raising funds for that. So this is the house in which the first three women's organizations came together to form Planned Parenthood of Greater Iowa. And those women's organizations, those names are in those three trees around that. They had me, well actually they had some of their folks who didn't have anything else to do sit down and try to find all those names one day. I didn't keep a log as to where they were, and they came to me and said, did you hide speculums in there? I said, no, no, I did not. But I think sometimes we start looking so hard to find something, that's what they saw and perceived with that. Also buried into that, sitting on the front porch is a stack of books. Up in a window is somebody reading a book. So you can do a lot of different things with it. This was an old bridge. I don't think it's part of the Madison County bridges. This is how I started a tree. First I get the framework of it done. Any drawing I'm doing, I get a real light pencil framework of it, and I kind of put in where I was going to do the names. I made a log at that time as to where those names were so people could find them a little bit later, and then progressed. You end out with the names, you start with the name, but then you add around it, so it kind of goes in there. This is the other side of that bathroom, by the way. So, Court Avenue in Des Moines, a lovely spot. It's the opposite angle from the one that we have up there that's hanging with Spaghetti Works with it. But Court Avenue in Des Moines hosts a very, very, very large farmers market every morning, or every Saturday morning during the summertime. And it was in that market area that our art gallery was going. And I've had people contact me 30 years later at remembering, I don't know whether they're remembering Julia with the long last name, or they're remembering the artwork, or whichever, but they find me, and I'm really pleased with that kind of the impression that's left behind. This is a coaster, and sitting out on that table over there, you could take a look at it a little bit later, there's a mug with this image on it, Court Avenue Brewing Company, down on Court Avenue, of course, in Des Moines. When I did that particular one, I think it was the first time my kids kind of said, wow, you're cool, Mom. You're on a beer stein, you know. And there's the beer stein and the bottle of, yeah, yeah, they do. And that is Court Avenue that you were speaking about a little while ago. One of the interesting things with this particular piece is that this kind of kicked off my career. I worked on it in a gallery right down on Court Avenue, and people would come by and start, oh, when you get finished with that, I'd sure like a copy of it. Okay, so I made 120 prints, and I thought, cried, I don't even know 120 people, but I just kind of thought, okay. And sometimes, as an artist, you get to take liberal license with it, or you create the liberal license with it. If you stand in that spot today, or even 30 years ago when it was done, you didn't see the Capitol in the background. It was there, but there was buildings that have built up. Buildings kind of have come into its place, but I kind of took that as a balance and created the depth that I wanted, and so that the picture and image was a little bit more balanced. A week after I finished making that 120 prints, that first building right there on the right that says Brody Building, it burned to the ground. Wow. And so everybody wanted those prints. They sold out. It was great. So, but the newspaper. I didn't. And neither did he. The newspaper called and asked if they could use this drawing as the before, and then they tried to get the photographer to take the after. And he calls me and he says, "Where were you standing? I can't get the Capitol in there." Artistic license. This is the front door to a fraternity house here in Iowa City, University of Iowa, Delta Chi. In there is also buried some Delta and Chi's and a few names of the people that made that place. This is the whole fraternity place. It overlooks the Hansher parking lot back there. It's to what would be our left. Those windows over there were the area where the house mother lived. And so the house mother's names are in that shrubbery right below it. And coming up the path there, there's a couple of phrases and sayings. Also, the coat of arms for the organization was kind of taken apart and buried into the trees in the background of it. This is a church in Des Moines, a beautiful one. I did some fraternity things, I guess. This is a fireplace. And this is also, that fireplace is on the inside of this building. This one was done for their 100th anniversary. They gave one to everybody who had given at certain levels or whatever, but that is a beautiful, beautiful building. This is one of my favorites. I loved doing windows for quite a while. I think when Windows 95 came out, I went on this venture. I'm going to do 95 different windows. I think I got to about 3. It didn't work. But this is at Hoyt Sherman Place in Des Moines. The Iowa Bar Association. So I'm kind of showing you some variety of this because along with it, you just don't have a drawing of a house or a building or a skyline. There's a lot of possibilities to do with it, and I've been kind of proud to share those ideas with people and happy that they want to pay me for it. You might know of this place. This is Iowa City. I was asked by Things and Things and Things. I know there's a few people in here who might recall that place. I was asked by them to create something just for them. They did not want black and gold. They wanted black, and silver was okay, but no black and gold. They wanted a skyline. They wanted coffee mugs, T-shirts, and a poster, the whole 9 yards. And they were the only ones who sold it since they commissioned it. To get that image, I need to tell you, I will back up. I'm not sure which I'm doing. I start with finding out what the family or the individual wants to have done. In this case, they wanted a skyline. They wanted to show as much of Iowa City as possible. Well, how do you get that when Iowa City is always the old cap? And I start off with photos I sit there, I make sketches as much as I possibly can. I take close-up, stupid-looking photos of some of the buildings so that I can get the detail that's there, and then it all somehow comes together on the drawing board. In doing that, I talked somebody into letting me get into their dorm room at Hillcrest, and I hung out the window and took the pictures kind of like this, and then kind of pushed them in together a little bit. So that artistic license. These three, the two on the top there, usually hang at my home, but they're around the corner over there. They are of Terrace Hill in Des Moines. Terrace Hill is where the governor lives. And, yep, that's me. We have some family that have this store in southern Iowa. They wanted to be known as, it was a True Value store. They wanted to be known as the store for all seasons, and posed to me what could they do with these big white delivery doors that they were no longer going to use for delivery purposes. And so I scoured around and took images of and sketches of a creek and did it in different seasons. So basically that creek does go all the way across all four of those seasons. It's kind of fun. But that particular image started off, I mean, each one of them were small, fit across the front of the piano. Then they went to a company that does all these signs on the, you know, the beer trucks and billboard posters and stuff. And they made this type of almost wallpaper that goes up there. And there it was. And to see your artwork that big is just awesome. I did a drawing for Hans Jewelers here in town. And it was just the front of Hans. Last I knew, it was still hanging in their office there, but they used it as an invitation to a very special event, and they also made postage stamps out of it. So the drawing is this big. You know, it's kind of fun to see the variety. This is the one that got me started putting names into particularly trees. Each of these branches on that tree have the names of my family. In my Louisville family, I should call that anyway. This is the home that they lived in, and so the names are in there. The people that, the grandparents, their name is in the trunk of the tree, so it kind of represents all of them growing out and branching out. Oh, this one's still up there. Thank you. Sometimes you have to go for inspiration on lots of things. This tree thing I've been into, I've been also into doing leaves. So this one was over, I think I've got over there. You've got leaves over here as well that you can see these originals. They're spoken for by somebody in this audience. So, but I show you some of these here today, not so much for you to say, I want that, I want to take it home. I want you to think, what would work for me? And I would like to work with you on doing some of those things that work for you. You know, if you like the concept of leaves and falling, that can be recreated for you. This is in the front of a fraternity building. This one was done in graphite. This one has a story. I mean, this is an old house in Maine, a family house. The third generation of that house asked me if I would, they had moved away from there. This brick or this rock was from that particular fencing that was around. A lot of the houses in Maine are, you know, have fences with that. It was really hard to do to get it just right, but I mean, if I make a mistake on paper, I start over again. Sometimes you can get by with erasing or some other little tricks I have, but there's no getting around it. This was, you put that on there, and this was a note card also. There's some of them over there to look at. both of these are here to look at too. These note cards, these did come out in note cards. The top one is the Jordan House in West Des Moines. It's a spot that was on the railroad trail that came up from the south, and it was one of the safety places that people could stop on their way to the north. Again, some colored pencil and ink. This one is hi and welcome. There's some, this image is over here as well. I worked with the Des Moines Adult and Community Education that put out a newsletter each week, or excuse me, each quarter of their classes. And this one was one of the ones that announced that. So it's over there. All lines don't have to be buildings. All lines don't have to, all black and white doesn't have to be colorful. Peacock feathers, we know, have such color. This one was done for my daughter's wedding, where peacock feathers were used as part of the theme throughout it. But this was part of the program, so it was in graphite that I did this one. Polk County Courthouse, used as programs for different things. This one, the original is up over here, and there's a small print over on the other side. This one is probably my pride and joy of all pieces because I know what it took to get this done. I was asked by central companies in Des Moines to draw something that represented all the different places that they worked with after the floods of '93. If you made it through the floods of '93, you celebrated this whole concept. So, but they had worked in many different communities around the state and asked me to do something to show all of that. That was not so easy to do. My husband and I packed the kids in the car and we drove around to little communities, and every once in a while I'd say, stop, let me out. And I'd take another picture of different buildings. We put them all together. The first two on the left are in Cedar Rapids. The next one is Lagomosinos in, it's right between Rock Island and Moline, but we have it as Rock Island. The little alleyway there and the building next to it are Java Joe's in Des Moines, which is no longer there. I'm really sorry to hear that. Then we have Grinnell and Valley Junction in West Des Moines, and East Village, that's the fire station there in East Village in Davenport. So putting them all together, people would look at that and say, I've been there. I've walked down that street, and really, you know, I'm glad. So, but when this one was being worked on, I realized you had to have the same person walk through each one of these buildings. And I was working from photos, which, you know, I could have been a different distance from the building to be able to get to line up. And I kept imagining, okay, the same size person walking through each one of those doors. And I had lines strung all over the drawing room to try to get the perspectives of it right. This is Cummings, Iowa. It was the childhood home of Senator Tom Harkin. This is a little bit closer image of that Planned Parenthood office home. One of the fun things about doing an image that big, this again, a church in Des Moines, but to do a close-up, almost a little shot of something added to that in the front door. Banister. There's a series of 4 Terrace Hill. When I did those, Governor Branstad was the one who was coming into office after they were done. They wanted to use some of those drawings to advertise Terrace Hill and to advertise some government things. I was approached by someone to have one of my image of the Capitol used in the campaign. And I said, oh, okay, you know, and I was kind of young and naive about politics at the time. And I said, well, let's get together. We'll set up a time. We can talk about what you want to do with it, and the copyright and the fee. And he said, fee? I said, yeah. He said, well, there'd be no fee with this. This would be like an honor for you to do. And I kind of just said to him, the governor wants me to pay my taxes, and I need an income to show that I made some money. So, we've got to, that's the balance I need, So they said no, and I said no, and we went our separate ways, and pretty soon I find one of those images of Terrace Hill used to advertise an opening of something. They cut off the name and the copyright symbol. So yeah, that's when I started learning all about copyright laws and things to protect my artwork. Because if I give it all away, it's valueless.
Did you sue?
I'm sorry?
Did you sue?
I tried. It wasn't financially. It wasn't going to be worth it to go through all of that. I went to them and said, we've got to come up with some sort of something. And they said, oh, well, we're having this big event, a fundraiser up here. You could come and set your artwork up in this room. No, okay. Make good connections anyway, and see what happens. So I spent all day setting it up, doing the whole thing. I get there, and they locked the damn room. They did not let me into the room for the event. So nobody saw the artwork. And it was not a fun moment. So, yeah. What'd you say?
My high school did the same thing. The front of one of the yearbooks was your drawing.
Yeah, but they asked. Yeah, there was communication in that. This one is one of the few I've done here in Iowa City. This is the President's Home over on Church Street. They've used this for programs. The original is hanging in the place. President Sally Mason was the one who commissioned it. And they use it on programs, and when they have events up there that they have a menu listed or a program, this is at the top of it. Backing up just a second. This one was used, the reason for the hiring of it was the 100th anniversary of the building. And so they wanted to commemorate it with that particular thing. A few years later, I came up with colon cancer, which was not fun. They also put this on their website to talk about the building. And I'm getting into I was pretty nervous about the whole thing, about the surgery they were going to do. They took out 12 inches of the colon, but I was getting into the operating room and chattering away like anybody does when they're nervous and crazy. And I said to the nurses, I said, we're going to get through this, right? And they were going, oh, yeah, you're going to do fine. Everything's going to be fine. I said, does your computer work over there? Does it do outside hospital things? Oh, yeah. And I said, can you pull up University of Iowa President's House? And they did, and they put this up. What do you want to see that for? That's a beautiful drawing. And I said, that's my name. I want you to get me back to that. I want these hands to do that again. And so we made it through. This one was done for Senator Tom Harkin, and my friend Tom Larkin worked for them at the time. So I met lots of people through that. This was a good example of the Republicans did. If I'm offending anybody, I'm sorry, but the Republicans did not want to pay for the artwork. The Democrats paid very nicely for what they wanted. Organizations, people like senators, have people come to to the Capitol all the time, and they're asked all the time to have to give something for some fundraiser or whatever. they would give one of these prints to be able to raise money with, or somebody who had given to their organization. So that worked out both ways. My print is back here, signed by Senator Harkin. This one's fun too. Was a spot for a wedding of some friends of ours, and they got married, walked across that bridge and everything. So I drew that, and then they had a mat board very wide around it that was used as their guest book. So people signed in there, and they have it hanging in their house. So it's not just buried in a book somewhere. Wells Fargo asked me to, when the building was done in Des Moines, and another little artistic license. If you stood and looked at that building, you would not see a reflection of the skyline, but in here you do. So there's the Capitol up on the one side, and the Botanical Center and various other buildings there. This is a window in Ithaca, New York, at the college there. There are little Takai all buried into that. I was asked to show you how I do some of this stuff. The first thing is I don't wear makeup, and I sit comfortably in a very clean, try to make it very clean house, but a spot that's clean, and I don't wear jewelry, but here I am. So, and my table and my light and everything is just like isolated, and I ignore my family and I don't pay any attention to what's going on around me. So this, I can't really talk today. Are you agreeing with me or not? I used to use a whole different series of technical pens. I've gone to Copic multi-liners. The ink in these is consistent Indian ink. One of the worst things you could ever do for the artist is to see work that you use two different colored pen, or do two different pens with, and the ink has faded differently. And I could see it, and I just, oh my God, I did see one just recently, and I pitched it. I threw it in the dumpster. So this is a field. When you're working in pen, you've got to work with what the light sees, what's closest to you first. In a watercolor wash, in other things, you could get it all the way across, but or there's other little techniques like taping it out in different sort of ways. But with the pen, if you're going to have birch trees, you've got to keep that white forward. So you're going to put more depth behind it. And of course, the pen tip doesn't want to work when you want it to. One of the things that these pens like the best is working more at a 45-degree angle rather than a 90-degree. They do flow a lot more. But you just start getting the feel of what you're doing, and with the line work, just keep it going. And then miss the places that might have branches or might have leaves to it. When you're working with a tip that is as small as a 0.18, 0.13, they're going to wear out rapidly. I like using the smaller tips. If you can imagine, I mean, it takes hours to do some of this stuff just because you're only covering one little minute surface at a time. So there have been times when I got bored and I wrote cuss words in. And people kind of looked at, somebody saw one of my cuss words once. I can't do that. That's terrible to have it in there. But what I ended up doing was then I work over the top of it and it makes more news. So I don't do cuss words anymore, and I do like doing people's names with it. But so it's building it slowly. When doing leaves is something I could do in this situation. Doing exact line work, I can't. There's no way, because again, I've got tools. Where am I? My handy dandy trust, I gotta do this. I work from photos and have the photos lined up and taped around the picture so I can keep referring to that back and forth. I go to the location as often as I can to just see if I've got a question, I leave it alone. I tell people it'll take me a couple of months before they're gonna see a finished product. It's not that I'm drawing solid for 2 months, it's that you've got to work with it and then get away. At one point, especially when the kids were off to college and the husband was traveling, I lined up M&Ms across the room so that I would reward myself with that M&M just to get away. And I also don't have water or anything else around because I have ruined pieces by just a drop of water on top of it. But I could do these leaves in this situation. And again, you want what's darkest behind you there. I picked up a smaller tip. And then that line work is done. I have a whole bunch of these little triangles and my trusty little T-square and my large T-square, and I'll work just line, 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 line. One of the things I was hoping to be able to do starting today but couldn't due to my own time restraints, I really would like to do the old Capitol here in town. And not for anybody, but for me, so I can control the copyright to it, the printing, and doing anything I want to. And if some great alumni wants to come along and purchase it or something, I'll work with that too. Yeah.
Oh, I want this.
You buy print. Yeah. But I want to get that lined up and have it being worked on before, especially for the open house that we'd be having here for the gallery walk. So if you want to come back and see some of that, that'd be great. Do you have questions, thoughts? Listen? No?
Do you have anything done for what Temple of Performing Arts in Des Moines?
No, I haven't.
Our son and his wife were married there, and they're going to be celebrating their 10th wedding anniversary in September.
It has stained glass.
And that's stained
A lot of it's really bad.
We can talk. In your wallet. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, how do you know when you're done?
Oh, well, you're an artist. You know the answer to
No, I am not an artist.
When we were younger, we were just walking around,
Mom!
promise, hours ago.
Sometimes I actually feel I'll walk away from it for a long time and come back and it's like something jumps out at me. Sometimes I've just gotten to the point where I can't stand it any longer. But I envision what the person's going to respond to. And a lot of times, I mean, I've done a lot of drawings through the last almost 40 years now. And yet I've known those people that the drawing went to, and I tried to make it so that they were proud of it. And it's meeting the goals that they wanted to do, not just a drawing, but their home. And I had a friend in Des Moines who would load up her palette once a year and walk around the house and redo all of her pictures. You know? So, yeah, she'd do that. And if, you know, you can update them sometimes. When I was going through some of this, I thought, oh, I see where I made a mistake on that, you know. Not quite finished with it, but I don't know. Yeah.
Juliet, I know you and love you as a person. You're a wonderful person. And you're an incredible artist.
Thank you.
You're just incredible. And what's next? What way, are you going to embrace doing something different, challenges?
The old Capitol, that one is going to be my,
Scarves and color.
yeah. I don't know. I hope some people here today think of ideas like that. Do I have something done? Well, we can recreate it. We can do it. The nice thing that's happened through the years, though, Liz, is that I'm not drawing these for the money. It's more coming from here.
From inside?
Yeah. When we moved here to Des Moines, from Des Moines to Iowa City, I thought all along, I'll be bringing the talent with me, and the connections that I had created there, they're a phone call away, or Des Moines was just 2 hours away, no big deal. But I found that I needed to have more of a constant income rather than a commission type income, and so I've got full-time jobs, and then but I missed doing this, so it became more me rather than what I did. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah,
it
and
does. How did you decide that you were an artist? I mean, did you know from when you were young that you were an artist?
I grew up around art with my mother.
Yeah, with your mom.
Yeah, I suppose she would have been my original inspiration all along. She'd sit with a drawing board. I just had a flashback of a bad memory there with that. But she'd sit with a board in front of her at night watching TV and be drawing. And my father thought that was okay because she was making money from what she was doing, rather than just having a good time drawing. So it kind of came and went. I had an art teacher in high school who really said, draw what you know, don't draw a mountain if you've never seen a mountain, So he had us drawing garbage cans. Really, things that in your own backyard that you could turn into what you were doing. So, any other thoughts, questions?
Yeah. When did you decide your particular style? I mean, you look at this, I know you did it. When did you decide that it was to do this type of art? I don't know if that's type is the right word.
I think what started me doing pen and ink
Yeah.
was that realtor who wanted something, and they were willing to pay me for it. And I thought, yeah, I can do that. It was kind of a no-brainer for me at the time. But it grew. The more I got doing it, I got better at it. And it just kind of developed from there. But I don't know, even back in Des Moines, there was another pen and ink artist who liked doing drawings of homes. And she would go along the streets and find a house, sit down and draw it, take it to the door, knock on the door, and say, here, now you owe me, $30 or whatever it was she was. And they said, no, we didn't ask you to do that, but I did it. And I thought, oh, that's crazy. That's a terrible way to sell your artwork, to do it and expect somebody to like it, and to have that. But she also used whiteout on her pieces. And I just thought, oh my God, and I realized that's when I started doing things. And I literally, if I make a bad mistake, I start over. I don't want to have somebody come along and see whiteout on an original, pay a couple $100 for that. That's crazy. So, yeah.
How long did it take you to do your donor tree? Did you start with all the names and you wrote them, and then you did the leaves part and the
You're talking actual drawing, not all
Yeah.
planning in the making.
Yeah, the actual drawing, yeah.
When did we present that, in the fall?
Yeah.
It was an all-year project. It was a good 7 months, in actual start of the paper to the end. But I set myself a schedule for that. I got up every morning and did it for an hour, just, and did nothing else. So I didn't have makeup on at that point, and I did, but you can't get makeup in the oils out of the paper. So there are lots of times I'll put another piece of paper underneath my arm if it's humid, so you're not doing that, or
I thought you calculated 80 hours in drawing time. That may be short.
I don't know, you
I don't know where they
cooked
came
80
from.
meals
Somehow
that
I
week,
said
that
that.
month.
So are you still doing your scarves? Maybe you should talk about that a little bit.
You're right. And I just found a piece that's over here talking about the scarves that was published in the Press Citizen, and I worked with this lovely lady at the Press Citizen. The scarves that she was just mentioning, if you haven't been around over that direction. When I got the colon cancer, and my daughter remembers this story differently than what I do, but I wasn't feeling too positive after the whole thing got over with. And having a hard time kind of getting out of bed and getting motivated to keep going. My mother had died a few years earlier than that, and she was an artist. I had a whole bunch of her art supplies and things stuffed in the basement. And when I was going to go through it, I'd start crying. I never got near it. But she had made some scarves a long time ago in one of her things that she was doing. She worked on jewelry and sculptures. She went from everything, every different kind of media that she could get a hold of at the time. And so all the supplies were down there. And Emily came to me and said, "Mom, if you don't get out of bed, all that all that stuff downstairs, we're just going to have to throw out because we don't know what it means to anybody. We don't know what it..." Well, no, you're not going to do that. So I got out of bed and I kept going, and I tried Mom's supplies, and it was fun. It was just crazy to get your hands permanently dyed in all these different colors, and I learned more about that, and so I started doing scarves. Liz has on one today, and there's other ones over here. You have one too? Yeah. It's, in doing those, I had at one point anyway, when I was doing a lot of them, given like 11% to colon cancer research. So it kind of just spurred that on. And so that article is about some of that. The scarves that are over here, one of the other nice things about them that I wanted to throw out to you is I've taught some classes in that and done it at home. I think it could be done here at some point. It'd be kind of fun to do. He's going, yeah. When I had them at home, we all had some wine and had a good time with it.
Well, you can do
What did I hear? Hey.
You won't be the first person walking through downtown Iowa City who's had to work.
Yeah. Anyway, I had people come in, learn how to do the thing, and we'd have a good time with it. Also doing them for weddings or group gifts or something. For Emily's bridesmaids, they all had ones in peacock colors of scarves. So if you've got some event coming up that something goes with, they can be made into little kerchiefs and scarves. So if you see something over here that you like, you would prefer it to be teal rather than turquoise, you let me know, or let Emily know, because she'll have my notebook if I'm talking too much, and be able to get something to you. If there's something on the walls here today that interests you, please let me know, or let Emily know, and we'll get it to you right after the show comes down. Thank you for your attention. This is a warm room, and I talked to you.